Okay. Hello?
Yeah. Stephanie, can you hear us? Okay, so we are live on social media platforms also, and we'll have some people who will be joining us live on Zoom. Hi friends, welcome again. This was our 8th session of this day 1 of CoRise Summit, where we had speakers from all over the world who has joined in. This is more like a North America section, where we have speakers from US and Canada who are like, for this particular session, we have speakers from US. I'm Jatin. I'm one of the co-founder of eChai network. We host startup meetups across 15 global cities, and this summit is being co-hosted by Vadhwani Foundation. Swaroop, who's not able to open his video, he's the representative of Vadhwani Foundation. So this particular session is, so day 1 was more of a sectorial, where we had a very specific fast-growing sector, so fintech, ad tech, health tech, and this one is about direct-to-consumer brands, where we have very prominent founders who have accepted the invite to join and share their experiences. So thank you so much, Stephanie, Beatrice, Saumya, and Stephanie and Kerry will just join in. So the format is that we'll just get started with a brief introduction by each of the speaker about them and their firm, and then we'll get to the question. So Tina, if you can briefly introduce yourself and your firm.
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's so lovely to be here, and thank you for having me, Janeet, and all my fellow panelists. I'm Tina Hedges. I'm the founder of LOLI Beauty. LOLI is the world's first zero-waste skincare brand. And so what that means, it's everything from how we source ingredients, we upcycle from organic food supply, to how we develop products. We don't formulate with water. Most of your skin, hair, and body products are made with 80 to 90% water, if not higher. We don't dilute with any chemicals, so it's all organic food-grade ingredients, and then we package in a fully sustainable way, so reusable glass and home compostable labels and bags for a fully zero-waste experience.
Awesome. And you're based in New York? Mm-hmm.
We're based in New York, yes.
Yeah, awesome.
Manhattan. I think three of us are.
Yeah.
Saumya, if you can briefly introduce yourself and your company.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're based. I'm Saumya Gupta. I'm the co-founder of 10 on 10. It's an apparel brand that's based primarily in India, and we recently launched in the United States. We have been in business for over a decade. We recently turned 11, yay. And we've been growing really fast in India. We've won over 30 awards for the growth that we've seen, and our products are different is because our supply chain is fully controlled by us, and there is a lot of philanthropic approach that we've taken throughout our journey. I do have a very strong journey where I'm actually a commercial pilot, and I've chosen my entrepreneurial journey because I feel at some point that became my calling. Wow. So I'm very excited to be here, share insights with everyone, and learn more.
Awesome. We'll have Stephanie and Beatrice will just join in, but I'll just get started with our discussions. Okay. Beatrice, if you can hear us and if I'm able to pronounce your name correctly, you can correct me. If you can briefly introduce about you and the Honeypot company.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. My name is Beatrice Dixon. I am the co-founder and CEO of the Honeypot company. Sorry, you hear my, hold on one second. Sorry.
That's totally fine.
It's okay. But we at the Honeypot, we are a plant-based feminine hygiene brand where we focus pretty much on everything that a woman needs for her daily or monthly health, centered around her vagina. So our products are made for humans with vaginas by humans with vaginas.
Awesome. So we'll get started with our questions. So there is this rise of, like in last 3-4 years, direct to consumer startups where, dependent on different channels, but you create your own channels and then leverage other channels later on. So Tina, how did you get into this business? What was the key insight that you had to start this?
So my journey actually began, and I love Saumya talking about how she was a commercial pilot and that sort of inspired her. I'm Cuban and grew up in the Blue Mountains of Jamaica. And so my early memories were like plucking ingredients from the garden or the sea and making, topical and ingestible remedies. And very much Beatrix, like Honey Pot, and you and I could have a long conversation about that and natural remedies. I then went into the big beauty industry when I graduated college and worked for companies like Estee Lauder and L'Oreal, driving innovation across all the categories: hair, skincare, color, fragrance, body, bath. I then left after a decade and a half of developing some of the best sellers across all of those categories and learning the business of beauty. I then went into the startup world, and my first startup was in 2005. I used reality TV. There was a show called Blowout about this narcissistic hairstylist. And I was the founder who came in and developed and launched his vegan sulfate-free hair brand. And we launched Sephora and QVC, a direct-to-consumer TV channel, back in 2005, omni-channel distribution, wholesale, because direct-to-consumer really wasn't a thing yet. That was my first startup. And then I went on to get involved in everything from launching a functional beverage to medical device in the beauty space. LOLI, which stands for Living Organic Loving Ingredients, began because I had about 5 or 6 years ago a crisis of health meeting a crisis of consciousness. So all of a sudden I started having all these autoimmune reactions and allergies. I went through early menopause, which made no sense. No doctor could understand why. And I started thinking about all the chemicals I had been using and layering on my body while I was developing all these products. And so I started Maria Kondoing my own beauty cabinet and sort of like stripping away everything and going back to my roots of Jamaica and Cuba and making my own beauty products. And then simultaneously, I was walking through a big beauty retailer looking at the rows and rows of plastic packaging filled with water and chemicals. And I said, why are we making products with 95% water? And when you have water, you have to add chemicals and colorants and synthetics and preservatives, and then over packaging that in single-use plastic. That makes no sense. And so that was the inspiration, my aha moment for LOLI. And I decided that I wanted to stir up a clean and conscious change in the $592 billion beauty industry.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tina. Stephanie, probably there is some network problem, but if you can hear us, can you briefly just introduce you and your firm? Stephanie?
Are you speaking to me? Yeah.
Yes,
I can hear you off and on. How do you hear me? This is difficult. Spectrum just jumped me to 200 megabytes download, but I think per second, but I think they may have gone.
Yep, it's coming
on it. Let's see what happened. Hear me?
Yep, now clearly.
It's quite bad.
Okay, so we'll probably wait for that. We'll
go and see how this goes. I'm Stephanie Sarka. I'm the.
Yes, please.
Shall I? Okay.
Yes, please.
My name is Stephanie Sarka. Apologize for this. I just got an upgrade, but it seems like it's caused more trouble than benefit. I am the founder of One Atelier. One Atelier is a luxury platform. We invented the brand a couple of years ago to use technology as a transformational platform for luxury space. Specifically, we're a custom brand, which allows us to do 3 things extremely well. One is provide a completely personal end-to-end experience for our customer, resulting in a one-of-a-kind piece that she's created that we handcraft in our factory in Manhattan. The second is the ability to have a supply chain, real-time and on-demand manufacturing. So there is virtually zero waste in our supply chain and production system.
Okay, so we missed the last part, Stephanie. So probably, Saumya, if you can, so you mentioned about, you were a pilot and now you run this D2C brand. What was that key insight that you had that made you, jump into this opportunity?
So
Yes.
I think it was the 2008 recession. They say diamonds are born when there's pressure. And I think that was pretty much that led to this shift. Since I was 3 years old, I wanted to be a pilot. I remember going into kindergarten with a plane in my hand, and literally all my teenage years were plagiarized to prepare my body and my health to become a pilot. But come 2008, that recession that pretty much punched everyone in the face, punched me too at a naive age of 18 and a half years old. And I spent a year looking around for jobs. There was bribery involved that my parents needed to pay. And mind you, they had already funded an entire flying course for me in the United States, which is extremely expensive. After that, I had to move on to find other avenues that I thought I was good at without needing an additional education. And one thing I was good was putting together 2 pieces of garments. And even though they could be from a street fair or somewhere, and I could show up at like a Met Gala looking like a queen in those. That was one of the pro things that everyone thought I had in me. I sort of put that into motion and decided that I was going to do apparel and that would be my thing going forward. And I did do some odd jobs like working at a call center. I worked as a gym receptionist to fund my products and to get that going because I did not want to ask my parents for any more of that. They had done their bit already. And after that, there came a point when those jobs were no longer needed. And I kept doing this business from a parking garage where my parents parked their car. All I did was ask them to park outside while I used that space. And I did that for about 5 years. This involved a lot of trading. I wasn't a manufacturer back then. And I then realized that I had reached a point where I could now afford an office. And that's where we expanded to like 4 offices within India. And we have now 1 in the US. And of course, a factory parallelly that I was able to set up.
Awesome. Beatrice, you have a very inspiring journey. How did you get into this business?
So I had a almost year-long bacterial vaginosis infection, and nothing that I did worked. And literally one morning, I was asleep and I had a very vivid dream with my grandmother. And the thing here that's crazy is that my grandmother's been dead since my mother was very young. So I've never even met my grandmother. I've only seen pictures of her. But I literally, I had been dealing with this thing for almost a year. Everything that I tried, nothing worked. That morning I was sleeping. I had a very vivid dream with her. We were literally sitting down at a table talking. And she handed me a piece of paper and it had a list of ingredients on it. And she kept telling me in the dream, remember what's on the paper, remember what's on the paper. And because I was like trying to talk to her, but she's like, don't talk to me, just remember what's on the paper, And so when I woke up, I remembered, literally I wrote it down, I made it within a couple of days. Like 4 to 5 days after that, everything that I was dealing with had went away. And so, that was literally my journey into how Honey Pot began. It took us a couple years because I wanted to test it on the market before we brought it to life. But, we tested it on as many women who would just use it for free. I would just give it away to women that I knew, people that I didn't know. I worked at Whole Foods at the time. So I would just ask people, I would like help them with their stuff and then walk them out and then ask them if they wanted to try my product because I was working in whole body and helping them with things that they had going on with their body. So I felt like we had made a connection. And we did that for almost a year and a half. And what we were realizing is a lot of those women were having the same results that I was. And then like we went to the Bronner Brothers hair show, which is a hair show in Atlanta, but it's like one of the largest Black hair shows. And we set up a booth and we sold out 600 bottles in a weekend. And that's really what told us that we had something. But that's how we got started. It was literally from a dream. We literally made it in my kitchen, and then it moved to my brother, who's my co-founder. It moved to his office, and then in 2017, when we got into Target, that's when, everything really like grew and went to another level. But
awesome. And Tina, So when you started up, what was those earliest challenges that you faced? Because there are a lot of early stage startup founders now with this momentum about building D2C brands, a lot of people will want to start, but the challenges you face and what worked for you initially?
Yeah, so I could talk for a long time about the challenges, and I'm sure all of my co-founders on this call also, the first challenge was raising money. I self-finance, very much like Beatrice's story. I self-financed the beginning of LOLI and our MVP, and tested it out and was doing it from my studio apartment on the Upper East Side, and like my mom was watching telenovelas and like packing the boxes and mispacking most of the boxes, and and we shipped like 1,000 boxes out of my apartment. I realized I was onto something, and then I went to go, but I had I used the 3 loaves and 5 fishes and made 10 loaves and 12 fishes, but I sort of didn't have any more money in my bank account to keep self-financing. So I went to go raise money, and I had all this traction. It wasn't just an idea on a piece of paper. And I started to go meet investors. And I literally had prominent venture capitalists tell me, it's too bad that you have so much experience and that you actually, LOLI is more than just an idea on a napkin. Because if you were just graduated out of Stanford or Harvard Business School and you had 0 experience, but you came to me and said, I want to disrupt the beauty industry, I would have written you a $2 million check. But the chances of a female founder 50 years old or over the age of 50 building a unicorn is slim to none. So imagine that. Like, I'm basically being told that my experience, my knowledge, my expertise, the fact that I've proven that there was a marketplace for it was counting against me. So that was really, really disheartening. And I was going on all these like tech pitch competitions and like being told, don't even bother get on the stage. You're never going to win. You're never, and the thing about me is I'm a Sagittarius and I'm stubborn. So I was like, don't tell me not to do it, because now I'm definitely going to do it. And so I just would get up on the stage, and I actually ended up getting into one of the most prestigious tech accelerators in New York City called Grand Central Tech. And to this day, I'm super honored by that. It was really nice of them to believe in me. And I got some seed funding at that point. But, I would say the sort of, we all know female founders have a hard time getting financing, but when you add ageism to it, it's even worse. So that would be like the first big challenge. There are many other challenges, but I would say that was like a really big hurdle for me.
Very well articulated. Stephanie, what were the key challenges you faced initially and what worked for you in your early days?
What worked for us in the early days, and just to back up one step, so we're a custom luxury brand, but more importantly, we've built a fashion platform that reflects it has really 3 platforms. It's our customization platform, the proprietary technology that allows us to extend it across virtually any category. We've built a supply chain platform so that we can bring in our materials in real time based on orders literally as we're getting them. And we've built an on-demand manufacturing platform. So all of this is extensible across multiple categories. We started with handbags, but we're working already on some other categories. So what worked best for us in the beginning was to have a broad view of what DTC was. So for us, DTC is anytime we can have the direct relationship with the client, but that can include in another retailer's environment. Having been the product of many other luxury brands, and even I had been at Coach for 7 years. I ran a previous life of Mark Cross, worked for Lou Frankfurt, and was very wary of the wholesale world for multiple reasons that I'd be happy to dive into. So I was committed to never getting involved with retailers on that basis. But we did have a retail partnership, and we continue to. It's been with Nordstrom, and we were in the midst of conversations with Lehman's and Saks as this whole thing came down, where we actually lease space and we have our own shops so that we own the customer experience through the customization all the way to the delivery of the product. In addition to online, and then we have also been building a stylist channel, so a direct sales channel where we have stylists who have books of clients and they sell to them on a one-on-one basis or on a group basis. So we brought these three together in a virtuous circle. And that really was when we started to see the momentum and the sort of exponential growth start to happen.
Awesome. Saumya, what were those key challenges for you in the early days and what worked for you?
I think one of the challenges was initially when I started out, the small capital that the jobs were bringing in was fine, but scaling up from there and adding that revenue was a problem. And with all due respect to my home country, there are certain rules that do not allow a female who is under the age of 23 to get a loan. And unfortunately, the only way for me to extend that was to take my mom's jewelry, her wedding jewelry, and pawn it against revenue that I picked up and keep paying it back and again pawning it as and when I needed capital. At a certain point, the wheel started rolling and I was able to rotate, but how do I scale faster considering all the competition around me? I did win a reality show in India parallel to what a Shark Tank is, and that was 2 weeks before my wedding, and the investors pulled back all the funding that was committed because they felt as a woman and who's getting married, I may get pregnant and quickly have a baby and may not be serious enough. And that was the day I decided that I'm not going to ask for any more money and I'm going to go on the bootstrap journey. So pretty much what I had to do throughout was to keep sacrificing maybe personal expenses and things like that and keep pumping in my own money and keep growing the business. And thankfully it has worked well so far. We've been able to reach a couple of million. It's been doing well. But at some point, considering now that US is fairly more open towards female founders, that's what I believe. But I do know every woman I've met has struggled to raise that money. But that is something where now I'm ready to like push forward and talk about it. But it's not something that's like a high priority for me that I need that investor on board. No, I've passed that stage where my wheel is now rolling on its own. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I think capital was one of the main things which all of us faced. And then customer acquisition is to keep bringing in those customers and build their loyalty towards your brand and deliver an end experience that does not leave them sour. So I do have customers that have been with me, who are like 10 years old until today, they're loyal to our label. Whether it's a customized outfit or whether it's something off the rack, I know for sure that if there's a sale or there's a new collection, those people do show up. So that's been very important and a struggle to build that. It's not been easy.
Correct. Beatrice, you briefly mentioned that, but what were the key challenges you faced in your early days and what worked for you?
There's so many challenges. You know, in the beginning, it was finding people to use the product, right? Because we didn't have money to do a proper clinical test, like proper clinical trials in the very beginning. So we had to kind of create our own, you know. Then it went from that to how do you produce your stuff in-house? How do you mail it out? You know, how do you set up all these accounts and mail it out? And how do you manage the customer experience? How do you build a website? You know, and then really it grew into, you know, because we weren't necessarily prepared to go into retail. Typically brands hire a broker or understand that retail is in their pathway and they, you know, and they build for that, right? For us, it was something that we wanted to do, but retail really came to us. Target reached out to us through our support channel and, you know, and then we pitched it. And it took us a year to work on it, but finally we got in. And our goal was really just to try to get Target to say yes, right? Like that was the purpose. But then we were like, shit, now we got to find some money because how are we going to pay for the inventory for getting into Target, right? And so, you know, then it was the family and friends rounds and all the investors that you're talking to and you know, a lot of them are saying no, some of them are waste of times. And then you get like 3 or 4 that'll say yes. And then you're praying to God that they can make up what you need in order to be able to get to where you're going. So, you know, it's constant challenges, but I think those were some of the biggest challenges. And then too, for me and my brother, I didn't start working in Honey Pot full time until early 2018 or late 2017, one of those. I don't even remember because it's crazy. But so we had regular jobs, right? We had family, you know, we had full-time work, we had families, and then we were raising money, and then we were, you know, and then we were running Honeypot. So there was just a tremendous amount of challenges, but all that stuff is good for you because it helps you to really understand. It's like you're in school, you know. So.
And one big part of building a D2C brand is leveraging digital. It could be a website or leveraging the social media platform. So Beatrice, in your experience, how did you leverage those digital platforms? Like you had an inbuilt team, you hired an agency. What was those things like?
Is that for me?
Yes. So we'll do a reverse.
Ask me that one more time. Somebody
Yes.
texted me and said they were here.
We'll start with you this time. Yep.
Okay. Well, can you ask me the question one more time, please?
Yep. So one of the key thing of building a D2C brand is leveraging digital platforms. Like you build a website, you leverage social media platforms. So in your case, how did you get started? You did it yourself, you had a team, or you hired an agency? What was those things like?
In the beginning, we had who's our other co-founder, Linda. We set up a website on Shopify, and we had no idea that like nobody was gonna come, right? And then, but we were doing, in the beginning, we did a lot of trade shows and festivals and things like that, because that got us in front of a mass amount of people all at one time. And so, and when we were there, we would like collect email lists and things of that nature. And then we set up a social media channel through Instagram, you know, which continues to be our largest form of communication. And we really grew that organically. And then, you know, we would do like little ad buys here and there because we didn't really have a lot of money. Everything that we made had to go right back into the business, buying products and ingredients and things like that. We didn't hire an agency until we were going into Target and really needed to rebrand the brand. And that wasn't even a marketing agency yet. Our first agency was like a branding agency. And then we went into like the digital marketing agency. So we got started in 2014. We didn't start using agencies until 2017.
Okay. Saumya,
Yeah.
Your experiences on that?
So for us, usually anything that was related to the website until we launched in the US for a consumer was probably just managed on our own. But after we've made the shift, the entire perspective of how digital works in the US versus India is very different. I do co-own a tech company. So I have them who work on my website all the time. And then there's the social media, and the digital ad agency is within that company. So pretty much everything is given to them. But all the social media posts, I still sit down and I use this app called LOLI, and I actually plan it for the entire month. So that is still something that I'm so deeply involved in. Like everyone tells me you need to now let that go. But for some reason, I don't want to let it go. I want to hold on to that part because it's so important for our consumers to connect with us on Instagram. And that's the only way everyone is discovering new products.
Correct.
So
Awesome. Stephanie, your experiences on that, leveraging the digital platforms?
Well, for us, our experience, the customer experience always starts with an interaction to our website, even if we're meeting her in a retail environment or with the stylist, because in any event, they're going through the customization experience utilizing the proprietary technology that we've developed. So in terms of how that started, we did have it built initially from a firm, you know, some years ago who did I think an incredible job, given we were trying to do something no one had done, on the back of a Spree platform. And we learned very quickly that it just was way too brittle, and we didn't have the flexibility to do what we needed to do, both in terms of the consumer experience, as well as the content management and the constant uploading of new products. Because as you can appreciate, each new product, if you want to have the photo realistic imagery that we have for customization, requires, it's like a big box of puzzle pieces that has every piece of every bag and every leather and every color. And so that was, we were running into all sorts of problems. So we eventually just brought it entirely in-house. We've got a team that's led here with some folks that we manage in Eastern Europe. And we've built from the ground up a completely proprietary technology, which actually is so breakthrough that now folks are asking to have us lease it from them, as a SaaS platform, which we're looking at as well while we build our own brand. But it has enabled us to just dramatically shift the experience. And we're in the midst of a variety of technology enhancements that we gave ourselves the opportunity to buckle down on over the last few months that will start rolling out in the fall, that will be totally transformational in terms of the luxury experience. And that's critical because, as I said, every client's journey with One Atelier, whether they interact with us on the site directly from home, or they're in a retail partner, or they're working with a stylist, starts with and ends with the customization experience on our platform. So we've really invested in making that completely unique and transformational.
Tina, your experiences on leveraging the digital initially?
Yeah, so I will begin by saying, I think I've met every charlatan in the digital agency world. I mean, wow, there's so many imposters. And, I think that there's because technology and digital platforms are changing at light speed, right? And I think that there's so many agencies out there that are trying to hang on to business by sort of pivoting and saying they do everything, right? They build websites, and they're experts at paid social, and they're experts at content creation. And unfortunately, in the beginning, hired a few, agencies, and I was always left with a bag of tricks. I was always left with like a website that was half functional, even though we were just like customizing on top of Shopify, and or things that just weren't right. So for the most part, we do everything in-house. It's not a very complex tech platform because, as I said, it's customized over Shopify. But we pretty much all our creative, all our branding, all our imagery, all of that is all done in-house, as well as all our products. We own all the formulas. We own, the recipes. We source all the ingredients. So we're very hands-on. I do find, though, that being in the ecosystem of a tech accelerator, I was able to find some tech solutions pretty quickly for things like, we partnered with a group that offered same-day delivery in Manhattan and LA. So that gave us the ability to compete with an Amazon Prime, but obviously not be on Amazon, and things like that. So I do find and try to use tech integrations that are easy with Shopify. But yeah, so that's my answer.
Awesome. And just adding on to that, so now there are a lot of platforms or solutions which enable the brand creators. So in your experiences, like 3-4 years back, what was difficult now has become easier, and what was that has become more difficult now? Tina?
Wow, yes. 4 years ago, when I actually did my MVP, Shopify, I had a subscription because I launched LOLI originally as the do-it-yourself, zero waste, blue apron of beauty. That was my MVP. So it was a surprise 3-month subscription box. And it was more like a way for me to get paid to focus group. I was like, hey, let people sign up for 3 months. Let me send them all different types of products, and let me find out how much they care about zero waste, how much they care about food grade, how much they care about waterless. And 4 years ago or 5 years ago, when I did that MVP, there wasn't a plugin to Shopify for subscription. There was no recharge or, other. So I actually had to have that website, original website, custom coded Ruby on Rails, like to build that website. Well, that was like a total waste of time because, like, flash forward 2 years later, 2.5 years later, there were all sorts of API plugins. So I think the question is, how do you keep ahead of it? How do you know, like, right now we use Intercom for customer service. Now I've found like 3 other cheaper versions that are more robust, that work better with Shopify. So you could spend as a founder, or, because I don't have a dedicated tech person, you could spend a lot of time just trying to find what are the latest, greatest solutions. So like, I would love like a curated, like I wish there was like a newsletter particular to like founders like me on Shopify that were like, here's the 5 apps you need to know that can change your business, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Awesome. Stephanie, what was that was difficult earlier and now it become easier, and the one thing which is getting more difficult now?
I think customer acquisition is getting easier because we've just spent so much time really getting to understand our customer and where to find her. So, you know, some of the things that others have said in the early days, we thought, you know, Facebook campaign would be one and done, not one and done, but you do one and you'd say, okay, this is working. And it was just a complete failure. And we did it through an agency and they were one of the best ones. And it had been a very thoughtful campaign, but it was just a complete failure. And so at that point I was like, we're not spending a dime until we figure this out. So we've really spent a lot of time getting to know who our customer is, doing lots of experiments in different ways. And so now we're at a place where I feel really comfortable both with, we're also going through a whole new rebranding that will be evident in the next few months, as well as a revamped customer acquisition program, digital acquisition. And I feel so much more confident now, you know, even what our sales proposition is, why people buy our brand. And I just think, you know, it's part of the entrepreneur's journey. You start with something in many cases that no one else has ever done. And you have to be comfortable living in this massive pool of ambiguity and be comfortable. I'm a big believer in this notion of the growth mindset. You know, so if things don't work, to me, it's not the end of the world. It's like, okay, you know, we learned something, it didn't go as we wanted, but there's something to take from this. Let's take it and then reiterate what's the next. And we apply that to virtually everything in our company. There are no mistakes. And let me say we make a lot of mistakes, but we don't, you know, sacrifice anybody because of it. We just try to sort of step back and acknowledge there was a mistake and then learn from it. And so that's been definitely the approach to really understanding what the value is for a custom brand for the luxury consumer. What's getting harder? Well, obviously right now fundraising is difficult. I was a co-founder of a company many years ago called GoTo.com, where we invented paid search. Actually, we invented the business model that powers Google today. And those were days when, you know, money was falling off of trees, at least for our business. And we took the company public within a year. We grew it to $1 billion in 4 years. And I've had numerous other experiences along that continuum. But I will say this has been probably the hardest one to fund. We got capital early on. And like many of the women on this panel, I also invested in it. And we were about to close on some funding as the pandemic started to set in. And so everything was put on pause. But so right now that's feeling like the hardest thing, but you know, we took advantage of this time to really revisit what our strategy is going forward in a fashion environment that's going to contract by 35% over the next year or two. And I feel very comfortable with our go forward strategy, but as a side project, which has now become also a second business, we invented an N95 type mask. And we have been granted $1 million by New York State to build that business. So that's basically going to be the cash cow feeding the luxury business. So we solved that problem for now, for a little while at least.
Awesome.
But money is, you know, obviously always top of mind. We were in a great place and it was starting to be self-funding and we were going to get some gross capital, but now we're going to revisit that in a different way.
Yep. Beatrice, your experience is like something which has become easier and which is becoming difficult now.
In the beginning, I mean, I think the customer being comfortable with the word vagina, oddly enough, wasn't a thing that was easy, right? And that word was very taboo, and having these conversations sometimes could just seem to be very uncomfortable. Not for me at all, you know, but the way that the world has kind of shifted, you know, having conversations about things that are very taboo have become less and less, but that's actually a part of our mission is to make these conversations feel natural, because they are. Body parts are natural, right? Infections are natural. All these things are natural. They're normal. They happen. And so, you know, those things used to be difficult. You know, raising money has its difficulties, you know, attaining customers, customer acquisition, you know, wasn't necessarily as hard when we were out in the world doing all the festivals and all the things, you know, but figuring out the tools that work with digital marketing, right? Like you hire agencies, they spend a shit ton of money. Your ROI seems like it looks good, but then it's like, it feels like it should be better. You know, I'm grateful to say now, you know, we were very fortunate to have a commercial, to be chosen to be on a commercial with Target. We were also very lucky to go viral. We're really lucky that we, you know, in the beginning, our business model wasn't necessarily looked at as an intelligent one, because we were the first brand that ever crossed over, right? Historically, most feminine hygiene brands stuck with something. They stuck with menstrual, or they stuck with cleansing. Our thought process is that we take on, our goal is to be everything that a woman needs for her vagina, right? So we're washes, wipes, pads, tampons, lubricants, you know, everything that you can possibly think of, right? If you walk down an aisle in a store, Honey Pot should be within each of those little sets. You know, but now that business model has actually been taken on even by some of our competitors, right? And so it's just really great to see how things transition. And it's really beautiful when you kind of stick to your guns and know what you want to do. So I think the fact that we really stuck to it and we never deviated from what our purpose was and how we wanted to grow and the way that we wanted to go about it. Now it's easier, but in the beginning it was like climbing a mountain that oil had been poured on. You know, I just want to get up, you know, but I'm grateful to say that the world definitely looks a lot different on all of those fronts.
Okay, awesome. Saumya, which is becoming harder and what is becoming easier?
So I think a couple of years ago, what was easier was our customers were fairly simple. If I look at just customer service, when I started out, it was me that answered customer service. If there was an escalation, I would put the customer on hold. 1 minute, I'm calling my manager. And then I would come back again on the phone that this is the manager speaking. And those early on days, it was just telephone and email, and the experience you could manage, and it was fine. But I mean, now we just, you know, fast forward to today, you have Instagram, you have Twitter, you have text, you have WhatsApp. And if you have a brick and mortar, you have a customer that's walking in. And these challenges where you want to maintain that experience same through every platform, I find that extremely difficult than what it was back in the day, because all it takes is a little slip in that experience and you've lost that customer. So back then it was easier and the customer was less demanding, but now the customers want things to happen instantly. I mean, I think it's more to do with Instagram, where you just flash and things change by an instant. I feel that's the mentality we are at now. So keeping up with that, I find that extremely challenging. And when I look at our competitors and study data every day, I find that there's a new innovation that someone has done something which pushes us to now move one step forward. So how do you keep up with that? And you can bring on someone from Harvard or Stanford to consult you, but that is also short-lived. They can put in their mind. So that remains my biggest challenge, is what's next,
Awesome.
which I think back then was simpler because there wasn't much.
There is a question on social media. So the theme is about D2C brands. So why did you choose the particular name for your company? What was the thought process for like 10 on 10? Saumya?
So it was my mom and I sitting at the dinner table and we were brainstorming names, and I am extremely spiritual. And I was like, I need to study the numerology. I need to study my stars and I need to take my sun sign. And my mom was like, what do you have in mind? Sweetheart, just say it, what's in your mind. And I'm like, it needs to be wholesome. It needs to be perfect. And my mom was like your school grades, 10 on 10. I'm a geek from school. I've always been a topper. She's like, you were like a 10 on 10 student. And I'm like, I love the word 10 on 10. That's the one we are going to go with. And then my mom decided, okay, let's design a quick logo. And my mom said, this is how your exam grades look. And she made that whole circle. And I was just so stuck on it. And I'm like, I'm not going to move. This is it for me.
Awesome. Beatrice, what's the story behind the name of your company?
That actually is hilarious. I was driving down the street in Atlanta And I was at a traffic light and I saw a band poster, and the band was called the Honey Pot Band. And I was like, I'm gonna call my company Honey Pot, and that's how it happened.
Wow. Stephanie?
Wasn't very deep.
Stephanie, what was the thought process behind the name of your company?
It was thought through quite a bit. We were pretty far along before we found the name. Part of it, of course, is guided by what's available in terms of URLs these days. But we knew it had to be one because our starting notion was there is one you, there should only be one of your bag. And so the number one needed to be part of it. And then Atelier, because we're a studio, we're a workshop in kind of the old French and Italian tradition. And we in fact have a factory in Manhattan doing that kind of European craftsmanship that they do in Italy still today. So that's how it all came together. But I still have the vision of the time when we were around the table, like 3 days after I'd had my first child, and sitting around a table and all of us trying to test names. And then I would check quickly to see if the domain was available and then test it again. But it served us incredibly well. And the logo was developed by our creative director, who's one of my co-founders. He's a brilliant designer. And again, it was just one of those things that kind of, I think as Saumya is saying, just kind of came out very naturally, this notion of infinity and a circle with a one in the middle. And we wanted to have some kind of digital reference, and it looks a little bit like an on-off button on a MacBook. So it all sort of came together very, very quickly once we found one that worked.
Awesome. Tina, you briefly mentioned about it, but what's the story behind the name?
So, as a marketer, I knew how difficult, and Stephanie, I think you're alluding to this, is not only to find a URL, but also, almost every word or name in the English language has been trademarked. So how do you find a unique in the category of class 3, which is, beauty and personal care? So actually, I was sipping a tequila with a friend and we were brainstorming, and I just said, these are the words that embody what this brand is about. It's living, it's organic not just in certification, but like it is holistic. It's living because it's raw, it's pure. Loving because everything comes from a pure place of the heart. And it's all about ingredients because it's what goes in. And so I put those words down on a napkin, and then I just started shuffling as an anagram the letters, and I came up with LOLI. But the funny part, which actually isn't so funny for me at the end, is I didn't realize after I got the website and trademarked and launched that in certain Asian countries and Eastern European countries, the word LOLI can stand for a very sexualized anime young female type character. So we have to contend with a lot of traffic that comes to our site looking for something very different from what we're offering. So that sort of works against us, but I was too far into the name to make the change. So we just look at our stats without that traffic in it.
Awesome. So one of the things we try to do as panelists to have open up for like panelists to ask questions to each other. So in case, Stephanie, you want to ask any question to anyone of them?
Oh gosh, come back to me in a minute. I'm sure I can come up with a good question.
Tina, you want to take a shot at this?
Sure. So I have a lot of questions. And by the way, I'm so in admiration of all three of you. And it's really wonderful to be on this, webinar with like three really powerful women and who are visionaries. So I'm just really impressed. Beatrice, my question for you, because you mentioned as one of your, challenges, how difficult it was to get women to talk about vagina. And that's when you, who are such a powerful, presence and so charismatic, are even in the room. What happens in retail, wholesale, when there's no one to guide the customer and to make them comfortable in that conversation? How have you overcome that challenge at point of sale in retail?
I think the way that we've overcome it is people need to take care of their vagina, you know, and we have a lot. I'm grateful to say that we don't have to do a ton of marketing at this point, but we have a lot of word of mouth. The testimonials on our products are really good. We're the highest. We have the most followers within any feminine hygiene brand. We're like the #1 followed in the world, I believe. And so I think it's become easier for us because people are actually looking for the product. But in the beginning, I think people just wanted something clean and effective. And our branding doesn't look like anything else on the shelf. You know, it is in a PET plastic bottle. But...
No judgment. No judgment. Don't worry, Beatrice. We're doing a collaboration. We'll do a zero waste product together. Don't worry.
I love it. But in the beginning, I mean, it was people just walking by the shelf, people wanting to try something new, because really there wasn't any other. There was Sweet Spot on the shelf, us, and then Summer's Even Vagisil, right? And people didn't necessarily connect to Sweet Spot as much as they did with Honey Pot. And I think when you looked at the testimonials, and then the other thing is we put our story on every single package. So everything has our story on it, on every single label. And so I think just connecting to people that way, and then just building up the following, and then being fortunate to go viral, and then having really great testimonials have all been things that have worked for us. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I have my question.
Yes.
It's actually something that we've really struggled with. So we talked about agencies earlier, and for the most part, we've brought marketing in-house, and we're going to reboot completely. I'm not a big fan of digital agencies and the such, because I just feel like people need to really live and breathe our brand. But PR is where that has broken down. So we've had 3 different agencies. They all start with a bang. But I just, to your point about charlatans, Tina, I just do not get the PR industry. And so I'm really struggling with the right thing to do is. One person, actually one of the founders of A Day, told me that she just makes it a strategy to take a PR agency on with the idea, she doesn't tell them, that's going to be 6 months. And then she's going to have another one for 6 months, because you basically get the best out of them in the first 6 months, and then they kind of fizzle out. And that's been largely our experience. Each of them have started strong and had good ideas, and then it just disappears. And I don't feel like we've gotten good press at a certain point there. Again, I just said, stop. We're going to reassess this because we're just pouring money down the drain. So I'd love to know what you folks are doing for PR and what your approach is, in-house, out-of-house, agency.
I'll take that to begin. So by the way, I know that founder from A Day, and I remember her telling me that, but by the way, they use very expensive agencies as well. So interesting. But my early years in beauty, so the first job I had after I actually was a fragrance counter person at Macy's Herald Square, that for Kristen Dior, that's how I started my career. But right after that, they plucked me and they put me in advertising and corporate communication. So I grew up originally, before I went into product innovation and marketing, I grew up in PR. So I have a very, very strong background in PR. And I understand the mechanism. And I honestly can say I've worked with very expensive agencies and boutique, small, independent, one person. And regardless of how big the team is, regardless what retainer you're paying, I always end up being the one on the phone call with like, have you thought of this? Have you this pitch, this opportunity? I think PR is very much like Instagram, and I really understood what Sonia was saying. Like, I can't let that go either, because it's the first form of communication, and no one tells your story better than you do, and no one understands your story better than you do. So my answer is, don't pay big retainers. You never get out of it what you need. They're basically going to smile and dial for the first 3 months and then go on autopilot. So find someone that you trust, smaller agency or one person that's hungry, pay them a retainer that whether or not they're getting you results continually. You don't feel it's a waste of money. It's just enough. And then supplement through your network, through, I do a lot of collaborations with brands. And things like that, of finding ways of making news other than the traditional. And by the way, I do not think media drives sales any longer.
Well, I agree with that. So to me, I agree PR in more of a non-conventional sense. I agree completely. 1 minute here, I'm gonna get a drink of water.
There is one audience question. Kumar has asked, any input on bringing clients on board for subscription-based model? Like, any one of you have a subscription for your products? Or in case, what would you advise someone who would want to start there? Saumya, you want to take that?
I've never been in the subscription field. I think Tina has been. So
Yeah, yes,
I
Tina.
think it should be more for Tina.
Yeah, I actually, that was our heritage. We started as subscription and then I stopped that. And then I went to, because what was happening, because we were a DIY box, what was happening is people would fall in love with, I think, DIY is like food porn. You fall in love with the idea, but the day-to-day is, you want product that you can use. So when we relaunched LOLI or launched LOLI officially, we just had product ready to sell. And I did have subscription as part of the opportunity. So, sort of auto pay subscription and send every 3 months or 2 months on a period you want. But I think you have to get enough traction on the products before people know that they want to lock themselves into being sold. So, or purchasing every couple. So, unless subscription is about, it's a different experience every month or every quarter, like a FabFitFun or Ipsy or something like that. I think you really have to gain traction on your product and have people realize it's part of their day-to-day necessities and they don't want to run out.
Awesome. There is one more question. Any cross-border collaboration opportunities, like in your businesses, are you doing that? Or yes, Tina,
I'm so excited to announce this. We are going to be launching cross-border with Nykaa in a few weeks.
Wow, awesome.
We will be available in India.
Awesome. Saumya, in a way, you are anyways doing that. But
yeah, we've been doing it for a while, and we've been in business in New York on a B2B basis for about 2 years. On our B2C platform, we've been just very new. We're at an infant stage. So, but on and off in the decade of my experience in business, we have had clients overseas who have just purchased in wholesale from us. So that's the only way. But to bring our brand presence, I'm very new. Of course, the USPTO and the trademark and all of that, that was like a long process and very different from what I had seen back in my home country. I literally had to enroll in college to study compliances that were needed in the US. So it's hard. It's not easy.
So thank you so much, everyone. We are towards the end part of it. So sometimes ending these Zoom calls becomes little tricky. So what we try to do, and Saumya was part of one of our earlier panels. So think of this as a university class, and you've been invited as a chief guest in a convocation, and you're supposed to give one-line convocation speech. So moment the last speaker ends their speech, I'll end the call on a high. So Saumya, what would be your one-line convocation message for this?
I think I say this to everyone, is to not be shy to ask. Sometimes you're going through so much of trouble and you think you're going to get through it alone. No, just ask people for help and don't be afraid. You haven't asked, your answer is still no. But if you actually ask people out there who know and have knowledge, put the question out there and you shall receive some help, if nothing. And that's been my motto throughout. And I've never shied away from asking people for help. And it has helped me achieve a lot of milestones through the business. Awesome. So keep asking.
Beatrice, your one-line message?
To take care of yourself. When we're in business, I think a lot of times we put so much focus and stress on going out into the world, right? And you want to win. You gotta sell these products. You need to be successful. You need to grow. You need to get into stores and all those things. Those are important. But what's also equally important is that you really work to take care of yourself, because if you're not eating well, if you're not sleeping right, if you are living in a depressed state, if you have a lot of neurosis that's happening, it can really affect how you handle your business. So, you know, a lot of times people ask me these questions all the time and they're kind of surprised that this is my answer. You know, but I think that it's really important to be very conscientious about how you take care and love yourself, because that is going to, you know, that's what you have to give to the world. That's how you're going to sell your products. That's how you're going to do your thing. So don't take that for granted.
Correct. Melanie has asked, so I'll take, because any words of encouragement for women who started late as an entrepreneur?
Who are you asking that?
Or anyone can respond.
Oh.
Yes, Tina, you want to?
I will. I'll answer, because I started, well, you know, my first startup in my 40s, and LOLI, I started about, you know, I was like 52. I'm 55 now. First of all, don't let anyone ever tell you that you're too old to do something. I mean, there are very old young souls, and they're very young old souls, right? Like, you know, it's about having a passion and a vision, and it doesn't really matter. Like, I would say, like, age doesn't matter. What matters is this your dharma? Do you want to do this because you have a real vision to make a difference? And if that isn't there, then you may not be able, regardless of your age, to power through the dark moments of the moon, because there are a lot of dark, I mean, I'm sure every single one of the panelists on this could talk about where you're just sitting there like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? It's like scary as everything, right? So that's what I would say is, like, age is irrelevant. It's about having the passion, the vision, and the energy to power through those dark moments.
Awesome. Stephanie, your one-line message, and then we will end with Tina's message, and I'll end the call once Tina finishes her sentence. Stephanie, your one-line message.
I mean, for me, being an entrepreneur is an attitude, and what I've embraced many years ago is this saying that I came across, which is, life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. And for me, I always try to find the mystery, and that's the fun. And, you know, we sign up for problems every day, but you also sign up for incredible breakthroughs that, you know, no one else has come across, because you're the one pursuing something that no one else has even thought of. So that's what sustains me. Some people are wired to have that perspective, and it allows us to get through it singly every single day, and others, you know, it's a little bit harder. But for me, I think all of us, we've gone through so much. So for me, if I can find the joy and the mystery in what I'm doing, it continues to propel me.
Awesome. Kelly, we are about to finish the session.
I am so sorry. I was experiencing technical difficulties and could not get on.
It's good. It's good that you joined. If you can just briefly give your
Sorry.
background so everybody gets the context. Just brief introduction of yours.
Yeah, so I'm Kelly Waters. I'm the CEO of Western Rise. Western Rise is a DTC men's performance clothing company, and we focus on maximum versatility. We launched in 2015 and have been scaling exponentially since then. And we focus on performance clothing for outdoor travel and every day.
Awesome. And we'll now do the skip to the end. Kelly, what would be your one-line message to early stage D2C startup founders? We'll directly come to the end.
I guess my biggest advice is always to find experienced advisors in your space. Regardless of whether you have co-founders or not, you're going to experience bumps in the road, and having people there that have navigated those before you that you can ask questions of is hugely important. So don't be afraid to reach out to experienced people and ask them for help.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. And Tina, your one-line message, and I'll end the call once you end your sentence.
So my one-line message is not particular just to direct to consumer. It's sort of more, motivation behind what you're doing is, I really believe, don't build your happiness on someone else's unhappiness. So as you build your business and as you think about your business, think about the impact it's going to have on people, on the planet, and on the universe. I mean, I think that's the consciousness that we're all living in right now, and that COVID has forced us to live in. But it's really a tenet I believe in very strongly. I believe in that also, by the way, for playing nicely in the sandbox with your competitors. You know, you can rise if you educate on the category, you all rise. So just, that's my one-liner. Don't build your happiness on someone else's unhappiness.
Thank you so much, everyone. See you on LinkedIn, Twitter, and on